He said he loved me, but love doesn't sound like silence at midnight when you're crying into your pillow and he's on the other side of the bed with his back turned. Love doesn't ignore the small things, like the way I used to hum in the kitchen or leave little notes in his wallet. Raymond used to smile at those, used to hold me tighter when I'd do the smallest things. Now, he barely blinked. It wasn't always this cold. In the beginning, we were electric. He'd pick me up from work, always with a coffee in hand, the exact way I liked it, to sugars, no cream. We'd talk for hours, laugh at nothing, plan trips we couldn't afford. He made me feel like I was the only girl in the world, until I wasn't. I think it started with his new job. That promotion changed something in him. More money, more pressure, new people. Calvin entered the picture around the same time. I didn't think much of him. At first, Raymond's work buddy, just another name. But suddenly, Calvin was everywhere. Group outings, game nights, even random Wednesday drinks. Every time I asked Raymond about it, he'd shrug me off like I was nagging. "You're being paranoid, Rose. He's just a friend." I stopped mentioning it after a while. I didn't want to be that girl, the insecure one, always questioning her man. But the distance grew like a shadow across the floor, spreading slowly until it touched everything. Conversations turned to nods, laughter to forced smiles. Then there was Miranda. I met her at one of Raymond's office parties. She was loud, gorgeous, the kind of woman who lit up a room without trying. Her lipstick was always perfect, her hair never out of place. I could see the way Raymond looked at her, not just with interest, but admiration, like she had something I didn't. I tried not to care, but when your man's eyes linger a little too long, you notice. "She's just Calvin's girl," Raymond told me, brushing it off, but I wasn't blind. Miranda barely even looked at Calvin, and when she did, it wasn't soft. It was cold, detached, like she was just playing a role. And I swear, the way she talked to Raymond, it had a rhythm to it. A private beat I wasn't part of. I started feeling like a stranger in my own life. I'd wake up next to Raymond and wonder who he saw when he looked at me. Was it the girl he used to adore, or just someone who filled the silence until something better came along? One night, I confronted him. "Are you seeing her?" My voice cracked, but I didn't let it shake me. He stared at me like I'd just accused him of murder. "Miranda, are you serious right now?" "Yes, I'm serious." "You think I haven't noticed the way you act around her? The way she smiles at you?" He laughed, that bitter, cruel kind of laugh that doesn't match his words. "You're losing it, Rose. You need to stop reading into everything." But he didn't deny it. He didn't hold my hand. He didn't say I was wrong. He just left the room, and that's when something inside me broke. Not in a loud, dramatic way. No screaming or slamming doors. Just a quiet kind of breaking. The kind that shifts the way you look at everything. I stopped waiting for him to notice me. I stopped trying to win his attention. I pulled back so far he didn't even see me anymore. He still came home every night, still tossed his keys on the same table, still kissed my cheek out of habit. But I had checked out, emotionally, mentally. Slowly, I started packing myself up, folding pieces of who I was and putting them somewhere safe. He didn't even notice when I stopped humming. In the kitchen, didn't ask where the notes went. He only noticed when I stopped begging, and by then, it was too late. A week passed before Raymond noticed the suitcase by the closet. Not packed, just out, sitting there like a warning shot. He looked at it, then looked at me. I didn't flinch. I just kept folding laundry, one shirt at a time, calm and quiet, like I was making dinner. I could feel his eyes on me, trying to figure out if this was real or just another one of those moods he thought would pass. "You going somewhere?" he asked, his tone flat but his jaw tight. I didn't look up. "Eventually," he scoffed. "Eventually? What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged, and that shrug said more than any fight we could have had. He wanted drama. He expected shouting, tears, a breakdown. But I wasn't giving him that. I wasn't going to let him think I was still fighting for a place in his world when I was already halfway out the door. "You know, you've been acting like a stranger," he said, crossing the room. "You barely talk to me anymore. You've been cold, distant." My hands paused for a second over a t-shirt, his favorite one, the one I'd bought him on our 3rd anniversary. I folded it slowly, placed it in the drawer, then finally looked at him. "And what were you expecting? That I'd keep smiling while you treated me like an afterthought?" He opened his mouth but didn't say anything, just stared, like he hadn't expected the truth to hit so plainly. Raymond, I said quietly, you stopped choosing me a long time ago. I'm just finally returning the favor. He shook his head. This is about Miranda, isn't it? You still think something's going on? I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. Not the way a lover looks. More like someone studying a crack in the wall and wondering when it started. It's not about Miranda. It's about me. I've spent months shrinking myself to fit into the silence you created. And I'm done. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, fingers laced together like he was trying to pray, but didn't remember how. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. That's the problem, I said. You didn't even notice you were doing it. That night, I slept on the couch. I didn't cry. I didn't stare at the ceiling asking why. I just curled under the blanket and listened to the quiet hum of the fridge, the only sound in a house that used to be full of music and laughter and late-night whispers. The next day, Calvin called. Hey Rose, his voice said through the speaker, low and careful. Can we talk? It caught me off guard. Calvin and I never really talked, not alone, but something in his tone made me say yes. We met at a little diner off 4th Street, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and burnt coffee. He looked tired, not the usual sharp, polished version of himself I'd seen at those work parties. He looked worn down, human. I know you probably don't want to see me, he said, stirring his coffee, but I thought you should know. Miranda's not who she pretends to be. I raised an eyebrow. You're just now figuring that out? He half laughed, but it was hollow. No, I've always known. I just didn't want to admit it. There was something in the way he looked at me, remorse maybe, or guilt. She's been messing with Raymond, he said finally. Not just flirting, not just being friendly. I walked in on them a few weeks ago. Nothing happened yet, but it was close. The air left my lungs slowly, like I already knew, but needed to hear it anyway. Calvin looked at me like he was bracing for a slap. I didn't come to stir the pot, he said quickly. I just thought you deserved to know before you make your decision. I nodded, more to myself than to him. Thanks for telling me. I left the diner with my hands cold and my mind racing. But even with everything spinning, I felt something unexpected. Relief, because now there was no more guessing, no more pretending. I could fix what was broken. The truth had finally shown its face. And it was uglier than I thought, but it was real, and I could finally move on from it. When I got back to the apartment, Raymond was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. Like nothing had changed. Like I hadn't just spent an hour confirming everything I'd suspected for months. He glanced up when I walked in, but I didn't say anything. I just watched him, watch the way he moved, so effortlessly, so calm. It almost made me angry. How could he be this at peace when I was unraveling? He slid the knife onto the cutting board and looked at me. You want dinner? That was the moment I knew we weren't on the same page anymore. I wasn't even in the same book. No, I said, setting my bag down. We need to talk. His body stiffened a little. Not much, just a small shift in his shoulders. But I noticed. I ran into Calvin, I said. He told me everything. Raymond didn't even pretend to be confused. He set the knife down carefully, like he was stalling. I watched his jaw tighten before he finally spoke. What did he say? That you and Miranda were about to cross a line. That he saw it. He didn't answer right away, just turned off the stove and leaned against the counter like he was tired of pretending. It wasn't what it looked like, he said, voice low. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that was the line. It's not what it looked like. The coward's way out. Then what was it, Raymond? I asked, folding my arms. Tell me, because from where I'm standing, it looked like you emotionally left this relationship and were waiting for someone else to give you a reason to walk. He looked away, and that told me everything. You could have just said you were done, I whispered. You didn't have to humiliate me first. His eyes met mine then, and for a second, I saw the man I fell in love with. The man who used to leave flowers on my windshield just because. The man who danced with me barefoot in the living room. But that man was long gone, and whatever was left couldn't even muster an apology. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said again. But you did, I said, this time without a crack in my voice. You hurt me every day you chose to stay silent while I was begging for crumbs of affection. He took a step forward like he wanted to fix something. But I stepped back. Don't, I said. We're not fixing this. I'm not one of your clients. You don't get to negotiate your way out of this. There was a long pause. And then finally he asked, So that's it. You're just leaving? I looked at him, really looked, and saw the confusion, the disbelief, the fragile ego cracking under the weight of rejection. Yes, I said. I am. You pushed me to my limit, Raymond, then acted shocked when I didn't beg to stay. He didn't stop me when I went to the bedroom, didn't follow. I packed in silence, folding the last pieces of myself that still lived in that apartment. Photos, old letters, the scarf he gave me on our first Christmas. I left most of it behind. When I walked out with my suitcase, he was still standing in the kitchen, still pretending like maybe this was temporary. But I didn't pause. I didn't give him a chance to speak. I just walked past him, opened the door, and stepped into the hallway. The air outside felt different, lighter, colder, real. My phone buzzed as I stood by the elevator. A message from Calvin. You okay? I didn't reply right away. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering, heart unsure. But then I typed back, I will be. And for the first time in months, I believed it. The first night away from Raymond felt eerily quiet. I stayed at a small hotel on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions and the front desk clerk barely looked up when I checked in. Room 205 smelled faintly of old air, conditioning, and detergent, but it was mine, my space. No tension, no guessing games, no heavy silence. Crawling between the walls, I lay on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. My suitcase was still zipped, untouched. I didn't have the energy to unpack. I just needed to exist somewhere else, somewhere he wasn't. That night, I didn't cry. I thought I would, but the tears never came. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they knew this wasn't a loss. Not really. It was more like cutting off something infected. Painful, yes. Necessary, absolutely. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. It took me a moment to remember where I was. My hand reached across the bed, out of habit, expecting to find warmth. But there was only a cold sheet and the echo of everything I'd walked away from. I turned on the small TV for background noise and sat at the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at the texts that hadn't come. Raymond hadn't messaged. Not once. No calls. No come back. No I'm sorry. Not even a pathetic attempt at blame. That silence said everything. Around M, Calvin called again. I know you're probably not in the mood to talk, he said, but if you want coffee or something, I'm around. A part of me wanted to say no, just hide for a while, process everything on my own. But the truth was, I didn't want to sit in that room another minute, thinking in circles. So I agreed. We met at a cafe downtown, neutral territory. Calvin looked better than he did the last time, less worn, more like someone who finally slept. You look like you needed to get out, he said as I sat down. I nodded. Yeah. The walls were starting to feel like they were judging me. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for the part I played, even if it was just standing by while everything fell apart. You didn't owe me anything, I said. You weren't the one who made me promises. No, but I saw how Miranda acted. I saw the shift in Raymond. I should have said something sooner. We sat in silence for a few minutes, sipping our drinks. There was something comforting in the quiet between us, not tense, not filled with unsaid words, just peaceful, honest. You ever think about how relationships don't just break, they rot? I asked, staring into my cup. Like, it's not a single moment. It's 1,000 small ones you don't notice until it's too late. He nodded. Slowly, yeah. And by the time you realize it, the foundation's already dust. There was a part of me, sitting there with Calvin, that wanted to rewind the past 6 months. Not to fix things with Raymond, no. That door was closed, but to save myself from staying too long, from hoping too hard, from loving someone who had already checked out. You planning to stay with Miranda? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Calvin shook his head, his jaw tightening. No, she moved out last night. Took her things and didn't say a word. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Funny, huh? He added. They did all that damage for each other, and now they're both alone. There was a weight in his voice, but also a hint of relief. Maybe we were both mourning different things, him the idea of loyalty, me the illusion of love. After we finished, he walked me back to my hotel. We didn't talk much on the way, but his presence made everything feel a little less heavy. At the door, he looked at me and said, you deserve better, Rose. And not in the cliché way people say when they don't know what else to offer. I mean it. You deserve someone who sees you every damn day. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, really looked. For once, I saw a man who wasn't hiding. No games, no pretenses. Thanks, I said quietly. That means more. Then you know. Then I went inside and let the door close behind me. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. Days passed. Each one felt like peeling off another layer of a life I no longer belonged to. I found a small rental a few miles from the city, a quiet one-bedroom with creaky floors and a crooked balcony railing. The kind of place no one would associate with Raymond. I paid the deposit with money I'd saved for a vacation we never took. Funny how plans built for two become lifeboats for one. I didn't tell anyone right away. No dramatic announcements. Just started living differently. Woke up early, made my own coffee, exactly how I liked it, no one to judge me for forgetting the sugar. I played music in the morning again, that same old playlist Raymond used to roll his eyes at. Now it filled the apartment like sunlight, but healing wasn't a straight road. Some nights still hit hard. I'd turn over in bed and instinctively reach for someone who wasn't there, or catch a whiff of his cologne on an old jacket and feel that sting behind my eyes. The kind you try to blink away because you're tired of crying. And then there were the texts. They came eventually late, spaced out, careful like he was stepping on eggshells. I've been thinking a lot. I miss you. Are you okay? I read them, every word. I never replied, because none of those messages came with a confession or an apology. Just vague guilt sent out like a fishing line, hoping I'd bite, but I didn't. Instead, I poured myself into rebuilding. I applied for a new job. One with fewer hours and a manager who actually smiled. I went back to painting on weekends, something I'd stopped when Raymond said it was a waste of time. I called my sister more. I forgave myself a little more each day. And Calvin, well, he didn't disappear. He checked in. Never pushy, never weird about it. Just there, texts here and there, the occasional coffee. One afternoon, he dropped by with a box of mismatched kitchen stuff from his place, said he figured I might be starting from scratch. It's nothing fancy, he said, setting the box on my counter. But I thought you could use some spoons that weren't stolen from takeout places. I laughed. A real one, the kind that came up from somewhere warm. He never made a move, never crossed a line, just listened when I talked, and talked when I needed silence. It was strange, feeling safe around a man again, not on edge, not calculating what he meant by every glance, every pause, just safe. One rainy afternoon we sat on my tiny balcony, sharing a bottle of cheap wine. The city below was slick with puddles and headlights. You ever think maybe we all settle too soon? I asked, watching raindrops gather on the railing. Like, we just grab the first hand that reaches out because we're afraid no one else will. Calvin took a sip, then leaned back in his chair. Yeah, I used to think love was about finding someone who picked you. But now I think it's about picking each other every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I didn't say anything for a while, just listened to the soft patter of rain and let that truth sink in. When I looked at him again, he wasn't looking at me like Raymond used to look at Miranda. There was no hunger, no chase, just presence, real, grounding presence. It scared me a little, because part of me still wasn't sure if I was ready to let someone in again. But another part, quieter, braver, whispered, maybe it's okay to try. The next morning, I saw another message from Raymond. Can we meet? I stared at it for a long time, not because I was tempted, but because I finally felt nothing, not anger, not sadness, just done. So I deleted it. No response, no closure, just peace. The kind you give yourself when you realize your silence is the loudest. Goodbye. A month passed. The space between who I used to be and who I was becoming widened with each day, and I was okay with that. The chaos had finally slowed into quiet. Not the cold, tense quiet I'd known with Raymond, but a soft one, the kind that left room to breathe. I stopped waiting for explanations that never came. I stopped playing back old arguments in my head, trying to find where things had cracked. Because I finally understood some people break you slowly, not violently. They chip away at your joy until you forget you ever had it. One afternoon, I ran into Miranda. It wasn't planned. I was coming out of a bookstore downtown, holding a second-hand copy of a poetry book that smelled like dust and forgotten dreams. And there she was across the street, sunglasses on, phone pressed to her ear. She saw me. I saw her. Neither of us looked away. After a beat, She lowered her phone and walked over, her heels clicking sharp against the pavement. Same perfect hair, same flawless lipstick. But something was off. There was tension behind her smile, like someone trying too hard to look unaffected. Rose, she said coolly, didn't expect to see you. Guess life's full of surprises, I replied, gripping my book a little tighter. She looked me up and down, not in a rude way, just curious. You look different. I feel different. A beat passed. She shifted her weight from one leg to the other, then tilted her head. So I guess Raymond told you everything, eventually, I said. Though most of it I already knew. She nodded slowly. He always hated being the bad guy, but he was never strong enough to be honest either. I raised an eyebrow. And what about you? Were you ever honest? Miranda smirked, but it faded quick. No, I was selfish. I wanted to win. I didn't even know what I was fighting for. I just liked knowing I could take something that wasn't mine. There was something in her voice, remorse maybe, or just fatigue. She looked tired, not physically, but like someone who'd run out of the thrill that kept them moving. I'm not proud of what I did, she added. I'm not interested in your guilt, I said quietly. I just want peace. She looked surprised by that, like she expected me to spit venom, throw insults, maybe even cry. But I was past all that. Anger is loud when you're still hurting, but once you heal, it doesn't need to speak. Miranda stepped back, nodded once, and said, well, I hope you find it. I already did. We parted with nothing more than that. No dramatic goodbye, no fake hug, just distance. Later that week, Calvin invited me to a small gallery event. He said a friend of his was showing some work, and he thought I might enjoy it. Part of me hesitated, old instincts whispered to keep to myself, to avoid anything that resembled closeness. But I didn't want to hide anymore. Not from people, not from life. The gallery was tucked inside an old building with creaky floors and high ceilings. The art was abstract, messy, beautiful. A little like how I felt inside, still figuring it out, still healing, but undeniably alive. Calvin stayed close, never invasive, always aware. At one point, he looked at a canvas, just chaotic reds and deep blues splashed across the surface, and said, this reminds me of you. I laughed. That bad, huh? No, he said, turning to me. That real, messy, honest, but still beautiful. I didn't respond right away, just stood there, heart fluttering quietly. Later, outside under the soft glow of streetlights, he asked, do you think there's a version of this? Of us? That doesn't hurt? I thought about it. Then I said, maybe the point isn't to avoid the hurt. Maybe it's about finding someone who doesn't use it against you. He didn't press further, didn't reach for my hand. He just smiled, that small, warm smile that said he understood without needing more. That night, back in my apartment, I looked in the mirror and didn't see someone broken. I saw someone rebuilding, and that was more than enough. A few weeks later, I got the call I wasn't expecting. ID was Raymond, not a text, not a voicemail, an actual call. My phone rang just as I was stepping out of the shower, steam still clinging to the mirror. I stared at the screen, at his name, lighting up like a ghost. I thought I'd buried. For a moment, I didn't move. My finger hovered over the decline button, but something, curiosity, maybe closure, made me answer. Hello? There was silence at first. Then his voice, quiet, worn. Rose, I waited. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, he continued, but I need 5 minutes. Please. I sighed, sat down on the edge of my bed, towels still wrapped around me. You've got 3. He let out a shaky breath. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not the empty kind, the real kind. I've been thinking, and I know I wasn't good to you. I was selfish. I let things go because it was easier than facing them. Facing you. My throat tightened, but I didn't say a word. I saw your post about the art gallery, he added. You looked happy. I don't remember the last time I saw that version of you. And that's on me. I should have protected it. That made me laugh, a sad, tired kind of laugh. You didn't just stop protecting it, Raymond. You were the one who broke it. I know, he whispered. There was a pause. And then, I miss you. I closed my eyes. That line used to mean everything. It used to make me ache. Now it just felt like a memory trying to claw its way back. You miss the version of me that tolerated your silence, I said. The one that bent over backward to earn what should have been freely given. He didn't argue. I didn't call to ask you to come back, he said after a moment. I know I don't deserve that. I needed to say it out loud. I swallowed. Then I hope you carry it with you. Not as regret but as a lesson. I will, he said. I promise. We ended the call with no goodbyes, no maybes. Just a soft click that echoed like the final page of a book being closed. I stared at the phone for a while. I didn't feel triumphant or sad, just still. Later that evening, Calvin came over. I didn't tell him about the call. Not yet. I wasn't hiding it, I just didn't want to give it more life than it already had. We made dinner together, side by side, like we'd been doing it for years. He knew how I liked my pasta. I knew which songs made him whistle when he thought I wasn't listening. At one point, I caught him looking at me. What? I asked, smiling without realizing it. He shrugged. You've changed, but in a good way. How so? You're lighter. Not because life's easier, because you stopped dragging dead weight. I looked down at my hands, then back at him. And if I pick up new weight? He stepped closer. Then maybe this time, you won't have to carry it alone. It was the way he said it, not dramatic, not romanticized, just honest. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. That night, we watched a movie and fell asleep on the couch. No pressure, no expectation. Just warmth and space and safety. Somewhere around a.m., I woke up to the sound of rain tapping against the window. Calvin was still asleep, his arm loosely around me, breath steady. I looked at him, not searching for signs or proof or reassurance, just looking. And all I felt was calm, not butterflies, not fireworks, just peace. And I realized maybe that's what real love feels like, not the chase, not the chaos, but the quiet assurance that someone is simply there. Weeks melted into months. The little apartment that once felt like a hiding place slowly turned into a home. My plants thrived on the windowsill, my shelves filled with books I'd always meant to read, and laughter, real, spontaneous, honest. Laughter echoed through the rooms more often now, not forced, not pretending, just life unfolding in a way I hadn't thought possible anymore. Calvin became part of that rhythm, not suddenly, not in some grand, sweeping moment of confession, but in the subtle, day-by-day ways that feel more like truth than anything else. He'd come by with groceries or text me photos of dogs in sweaters, or leave a post-it on my door with dumb jokes. That made me laugh out loud. He never asked for more than I could give, never tried to define what we were becoming, and that, strangely enough, made me want to give him more. One morning, we sat on the floor of my living room, sorting through a box of old photos I'd avoided for months, pictures of me and Raymond, of family gatherings, birthdays, vacations we pretended to enjoy. I held one up, me laughing on a beach, hair blowing wild across my face. Raymond's arm was around me, but my eyes weren't looking at him. You looked happy, Calvin said, gently. I replied, but not because of him. I think I was just trying so hard to be. I set the photo aside, not ripped, not burned, just let go. You ever think you're over something? I said, and then it creeps up out of nowhere and reminds you there's still a scar? Calvin nodded. Scars don't mean it still hurts. They just mean it mattered. I leaned back against the couch, letting that sink in. Later that week, I ran into Raymond again at the grocery store, of all places. He looked thinner, more tired. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair grown out in a way I'd never seen. He noticed me before I noticed him. Rose, he said, stopping mid-aisle. Raymond. We stood there, surrounded by cereal boxes and canned soup. Funny how life doesn't care about poetic timing. You look good, he said, forcing a smile. Thanks, I replied. You look different. There was a pause. He cleared his throat, glanced at my cart. So how've you been? Better, I said simply. He nodded, like he expected that but still didn't like hearing it. I've been in therapy, he offered, trying to figure things out. I hope it helps. Another pause. Then, softer. Do you hate me? I looked him dead in the eyes. No, I don't. Relief passed over his face. But I don't love you either, I added. He looked away, swallowing hard. I deserved that. You deserved honesty a long time ago, I said. From me. From yourself. We both did. He nodded slowly. Well, I'm glad you're okay. I am. And just like that, I pushed my cart past him and kept walking. No dramatic ending. No turning around for one last look. Just forward. That night, I told Calvin about it. How'd it feel? He asked, passing me a glass of wine. Like closing. A book you already finished, I said. No anger, no grief, just done. He smiled, brushing a thumb across my hand. You've come a long way. So have you. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that didn't need filling, and then, I said something I hadn't said in a long time. I'm ready. Calvin looked at me, eyes steady. For what? For the next chapter. His smile grew, soft and certain. Then let's write it. The next chapter didn't come in one big moment. It came in slow, quiet ways, mornings where I woke up without that pit in my stomach, days that passed without waiting for an apology that never came, nights spent wrapped in warmth instead of questions. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I didn't fall for Calvin all at once. I grew into him like the way you learn the feel of your own skin again after being bruised too long. There was a comfort in how he showed up, not with grand promises, but with presence, steady, real, honest. We didn't label things right away. We just lived. He helped me hang shelves. I cooked while he washed dishes. We made space for each other without asking for proof, because trust had stopped being a gift and started being a choice we made daily. One night, we were sitting on the fire escape with a blanket around our shoulders. The city lights flickered below us, and a soft breeze carried the sound of someone playing jazz a few buildings over. We didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "You're not the same woman I met at that diner." I smiled. Good. No, I mean, you were strong then, but now? He looked at me, serious. Now you don't flinch. You speak like you know your worth. I thought about that. About how long I'd spent flinching, how often I'd lowered my voice just to keep someone else's ego intact. I'm done begging, I said. Calvin turned toward me. You never should have had to. He kissed me then. No fireworks, no slow motion movie magic. Just lips against lips, soft and sure, like something that had been waiting patiently, not to rush, but to be right. I didn't feel guilt, or fear, or doubt. I felt home. From that moment on, we didn't need to define anything. It was understood. It was in the way he reached for my hand without looking, the way I leaned into his laugh like it was medicine. Meanwhile, Raymond's name stopped showing up on my phone. The last message was a photo of us from 2 years ago. No words, just a memory. I didn't respond. I just deleted it, because memories don't deserve power, not the ones built on lies. I bumped into Miranda once more briefly, at a traffic light. She was in the passenger seat of some man's car, laughing at something on her phone. She didn't see me, and I didn't care. That chapter, too, had closed. One Saturday, I took Calvin to the coast, the same beach where that old photo had been taken, the one with Raymond's arm around me. But this time, I brought a camera. I asked Calvin to take a picture of me standing by the shore. He snapped a few shots, then ran over, laughing as the waves soaked his shoes. What are you grinning at? He asked. I said, shaking the water off my legs. This is the first photo of me that doesn't feel like I'm performing. He looked at me for a long second, then said, that's the version of you I'm in love with. The words hung in the salty air between us, unforced, unplanned, and I didn't hesitate. I love you too. It didn't feel scary. It didn't feel rushed. It felt earned. That night, lying beside him in a small beachside motel with sand still stuck to our feet and sunburn on our noses, I realized something. Raymond may have broken me, but I rebuilt myself, and this quiet, fierce, ordinary kind of love I found with Calvin was mine. No begging, no proving, no pretending, just peace, just choosing, every damn day.